All right, hello everyone, and this is the first Q&A session of the week for Tuesday, June 8th. And welcome everyone that will be watching this live, well, not live, but the recording of it on Sunday. All right, guys, we got a bunch of people in the private Q&A, and we're gonna begin with an audio question. So Adnan, go ahead and ask your question to kick us off.
Thank you. So yeah, I was watching Joe Saz's live stream, and he's quite bearish. He thinks we can go to around the 14K region. And also, when looking at your live stream today, you mentioned about buying the dip around mid-June. So around mid-June, there could be a death cross. Would you? Because usually after a death cross, there would usually be like more significant downfall. Do you think at that specific moment it would be a good time to buy the dip or wait even more to go in?
Okay, no, I got it. Okay, let's go to the answer. So I'm looking at the daily chart, and what happens very often, and I teach this in my workshops, is that when the death cross occurs and the price is at making a brand new swing low at the point of the death cross, which is what is very likely to happen. It is very likely we're going to drop into the $26,000, $27,000 range over the next 7 days as the death cross occurs. That is the worst time to short. That is usually when you get the mother of all dead cat bounces. So I am not yet prepared to call sub 20,000. I am still looking for the low to be in the $20,000 range. It could be 28,000. It could be 23,000. We have no idea. But I am expecting a drop down into the 20s over the next 7 days. And then as the death cross is happening, and everyone is talking about how the death cross is the death of Bitcoin, when it happens, as the price of Bitcoin is at its lows, it will rebound right into the moving averages. But then, like I was saying earlier, I'm expecting the overall drop to end very, very soon, either even this week, later this week, or potentially next week, and definitely by July. So the only way I am considering sub 20,000 is if we rally off of the mid to upper 20s into the moving averages, that will be in the 40s. And then if we can't, break above the moving averages sometime in July, August, then we turn down. Then my entire outlook on the whole situation becomes different. Then this bear market could last into the winter. And then we can go sub 20. But right now, I am not looking at sub 20. I'm looking at a significant low being made in the 20s, going back into the 40s, and then reevaluate the whole situation. Does that answer?
Yep, thank you very much.
Okay. All right, Gino, hey, buddy. Still got to come down to Puerto Rico. One of the few places that I should have been at many times, but still have not gotten there. Where do you see capitulation for this current correction? Well, I think I just answered that. And I answered it during the live stream. I see it happening right around here in the $28,000 range and later this week or early next week. So over the next 7 days, down to as low as 28 is where I see this capitulation ending. Right around the time of the death cross. Mentally, all right, yep. We got a weekly buy. We have the MRI weekly buy, but I wouldn't buy right now for two reasons. One, this is an ugly candle that doesn't look like it has like a stop. Like you need bullishness. You need some bullishness to buy an MRI buy. So there's two requirements for me to buy the MRI buy. Either it has to drop a lot, and I'm trying, like, this is too early to catch a falling knife, and there's not enough bullishness to to know that it's reversing. And also, when you look at the daily chart, you still have 4 more days before a bottom, which will still be within the weekly candle. So right now, we wait for the dip to complete itself.
The other thing I would say is the last weekly buy, if I'm seeing it correctly, was like October of 2019. And it wasn't the best place to buy anyhow.
Yeah, so that happened right here. And that was a crazy week because this all happened, this giant crash and run up happened literally in 24 hours. And when this happened, this was at the financial summit in Bali, and we were all in a cave without internet when this was happening. It was like the worst timing of all time. This was the week of October 21st. If I go to the daily chart on that, and I use this button, and we go to 2019, October, I'll use this day, and then we go to October. See this right here? This insanity? This happened right here, and we crashed. This crash happened while we were in the cave. And then and then there was this big rebound. But this giant crash occurred. Like this whole thing played out while we were at the financial summit. So you would think that that's a good thing. A bunch of high-end and hedge funds and all these traders. We were all there, like Joe and Socrates and Ugly, and we wish Tyler was there and like other big traders. And we just want to, have a good time and chat and talk. But like this price action, like kind of ruined the good time because, we want to relax. We want the market to not be volatile while we're all, discussing the future of the market and how to trade. So the last thing I want is monster volatility like this at the next financial summit. Though the next financial summit is going to have a 9-hour trading competition. So if that's happening on that day, this would be interesting. But again,
do you have any type of round table coming up with like Socrates, Joe, Willie, or something like that? I'd love to see the different perspectives of everybody because Socrates is the one that worked with Tyler, right? So is he doing any hyperwave stuff right now?
So Socrates at the moment is taking some time off from public life. And ironically, so is Willie Woo. So you're not going to hear from either of them for a little while. So Willie Woo is about to be a dad, so he's taking paternity leave while the baby is born. And Socrates is taking general time off. And Joe Saz is too busy running Embly and getting that off the ground. So everyone's a little bit busy. But we'll try to get one of these things going. My friend Four Flies is going to come on this channel later this week. And he'll be joining us at a financial summit as well. And he's got a YouTube channel as well about trading. Right now, we're still dropping. It's the daily chart. So to me, an amazing buy the dip is coming. Well, a potential buy the dip is coming in, tomorrow on a 4-hour chart. But I'll wait for the daily to give me something useful. All right, we got a hand up. Oh, hands down now. All right, a few more questions. I got a few more minutes. You can go to a really low level time frame. Let's go to 1 hour. Let's go to a 10-minute. See, right now I'm very bearish on a 10-minute chart because we just broke the prior lows. That's a short trade in the making right there. I know it looks crazy to short right now, but on a 10-minute chart, that's a short. And this may be short-lived because we got an MRI buy coming up in 10 minutes, in 20 minutes. And ideally, this is not the best time to short. The best time to short on a 10-minute chart would have been right here. Look at this. Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous support and the MRI support. And we did get an MRI buy, but this is where your MRI buy is conflicting with your chart pattern. And a chart pattern is always more important than the MRI. And then all hell breaks loose. This was the time to short on a 10-minute scale. this is not as great of a time to short, but as a short-term trader, that could be a nice scalp on a short. Either way, it's a good time to stack some sats. Look at that beautiful MRI sell on a 10-minute chart too. See, the samurai buy is not very good. The samurai buy is happening at the bottom of a consolidation. That's terrible. And the next candle just takes it all out. Like, I would not be buying this samurai buy because it's not happening at the lows. The next samurai buy is a potential buy on a 10-minute chart, but it would be counter the 4-hour, the daily, and not counter the weekly, but the weekly isn't ready yet. It's too early. All right, go for it. Got your hand up.
Yeah, so I mean, I sort of think Bitcoin's had a lot of stench around it, like the last couple months with Elon, and then everybody kind of attacking him, laser eyes. My opinion right now is we're in a downward trend that could last a year to a year and a half, and I think that's going to be important for people to get in, and for some of the stench of this bad stuff that's been happening and the way the kind of community has behaved, in my opinion, to kind of wear off before the next move up. The only way I give it maybe a 10 to 15% chance we reverse from here to all new time highs is if big players come in, you know, and announce Apple or Facebook or somebody put a bunch on their treasury. But other than that, I mean, I really see as the trend is down, it's going to continue down. We'll go into accumulation, and you know, we don't pass 65 again for 12 to 24 months. I don't think this was the big run, but this was more like, it feels like more like a 2019 run where it rounded top and came back over down into the buy zone.
I mean, it's possible, but I still see this more as that first bubble of 2013. I still see it more like this.
No blow off top though.
I still see it more like this. I know there wasn't the kind of blow off top, but we also didn't fall 85%.
Yeah.
There's actually a big difference between 85% fall and a 60% fall. Huge difference.
Agree.
That's like one more halving on the price. So this drop lasted. See, the secondary low wasn't the price low. You can see how this low did not breach the initial lows. The initial drop was down to $50, 45, $50 on some exchanges. But this was in April, and this was in July. Very similar to what we're doing now. Our top was, I believe, in February or April as well. When was our top? Our top was in April. And this bottom, this last candle was in July. So I think July is where we're going to reverse trend. Now, we'll probably make the low in July, June or July as well. So I think the low is coming. It's coming soon. And I think that low is going to be in the 20s. How low into the 20s? Hard to say. Could be as low as literally 20. But it could also be only down to 28, which we hit later this week. So I think it's about to end. Like, I still don't see another 12 months of downside. I really only see about 6 more weeks max of downside.
The part
now, that downside could be severe, but I only see it for another 6 weeks. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I'm becoming more of a believer in the lengthening cycle rather than the kind of hardcore 4-year. It's got to follow this many months after the halving. The more I listen to what I find online as the level heads, you know, not the people that are posting those videos like, you know, with their crazy faces and all that stuff, but the ones that are really thinking through it and looking at the data, it looks to me like the cycles are lengthening, but the peaks to peaks are getting further apart, and there'll be some noise in between. And that's the one thing that every time I see that stuff and I watch those, it really leads me to believe that we got to be a little further out before we really hit that next big number. Look how close those peaks are.
Over here, back in 2013, you mean?
Well, even late 2017 to 65,000. I mean, that's not that far compared to the 2014 to 2018, we'll call it, peak.
Right, but the 2014 peak didn't break the prior swing high.
2014 did.
Well, I'm sorry, the 2019 peak did not break the 2017 peak.
Like, I look at the 2019 peak as just the bottom rounding area of around 2016, nothing more than that. I mean, you're right, it didn't break the previous all-time high, but 2014 peak, if you go way back to 2014, look how far it is from the late 2017, 2018 peak. Look at the space between those.
Correct.
And the space between the very first peak in 2012 and the 2014 peak. See how they got farther apart? I'm sort of expecting this next peak to get further away from the 2018 peak. And you'll get the blow off top then.
I agree, which is why I'm expecting the next peak to come in like 2023 in preparation for the next halving.
Okay.
Right? But it all depends how fast we go up. I'm still looking for a bottom right here. So it's possible that this run up, so let's say we bottom out at 28K this summer. I'm not expecting the peak to come in this year. Like, this was a big run up in a short amount of time. I'm actually looking for a more dragged out move up. So it could take us the next year and a half to go from 28,000 to 150,000.
Okay.
And now the next peak from this peak is going to be a good, 6 years.
I see. That is where I'm heading in with my brain as well. I think we differ in the fact that I think the down may not come as quick as you might think, in my opinion, and it may stay down there through the end of this year before we even see it turn direction.
Right. But that's the thing. But if we do drag out the low, if we continue dropping for the next 12 months, then the run up could be faster. Like, I think we're going to top, 6 months before the halving. I think it's going to be a little bit different. I think that going into the next halving, there'll be a monster run up. So the slower we go, so either the longer the drags or the slower we go up, I think there'll be a huge blow off top before the next halving. So we are all so used to the halving pumping the price higher. And I think it's going to be different this time. I think the big pump is going to take place before the halving. The $250,000 Bitcoin is coming before the halving. And then we're going to have a huge bear market through the next halving where people are going to lose their shit again, that mining is going to collapse. Like, this is basically the Bitcoin cycle. Oh my God, mining is dead, mining is dead. And now we're looking at the complete opposite situation where everyone is like, you can't get the mining equipment because mining is so profitable.
It's just a quick question. It was about the cycles. So, you know how the bull cycles, they come every 4 years. So I was wondering if you still believe in this model, like the 4 year cycle thing, and then 3 years.
We're in the middle of it. We're in the middle of it right now. We're in a bull cycle, but the bull cycle doesn't last 4 years. A 4 year cycle has both a bull and a bear. And right now we're in the bull phase of the 4 year cycle. And the bull phase of this 4 year cycle, I believe, started in March of 2020. I remember I was very, very cautious all throughout 2019, along with Tyler Jenks. And this is where the bull cycle began. For me, the bull cycle started on March 2020. And I think this bull cycle will last for about 1 to 2 years. It's already been over a year. So we got one more year of the bull cycle. So sometime in 2022, but as late as 2023, we will end the bull cycle. I think the bull cycle will end before the halving. And we're going to have a bear cycle through the halving.
But wouldn't that be something new? This is like,
yes,
a super cycle.
It's not coming up. I mean, we're always in the cycle. So it's you just have to identify where the bull and bear begin. So let's go back. We'll go with the monthly chart just for clarity. Okay. So here's the monthly chart. So Bitcoin starts in a bull cycle, right? We go up from July 2020 is my first price data. And the bull cycle ends right there on an MRI top, ironically, in July 2011. So 1 year. But Bitcoin's been going up before that. I mean, this is just where Mt. Gox began. So Bitcoin, a few years, and then we have our first bear cycle. Now, the bear didn't last very long. The bear only lasted halfway. So these are monthly candles. So we got from July, and right here is where the bull market begins, December. Multi-year bull market followed by am I still on? I just got an internet. No, it looks good. Okay. And then we had a 6-month bear cycle. Then we had another bull cycle. Now, to me, this whole thing is one long bull cycle. Now, the bull cycle to me starts somewhere here, November, December 2011, and ends November, December 2013. 2-year bull run. How long was the bear cycle? Well, the bear cycle to me ended here in September 2015. So this was all bear. By the way, this was the price low. This was the end of the bull cycle. This was actually lower. On this particular chart, it shows us that the low was 166 here and the low was 162 here. I remember this very well. The price low was lower on this day than on this day. It's just that, like, it depends on how you do your indexing. Either way, it doesn't matter. The bull run lasted exactly 2 years, and the bear run was from December until August, a year and a half. So this one lasted a year and a half on a bear, 2 years on the bull. Then the bull market begins. The bull market starts in August, September, and it runs all the way until December. So this bull run was about a year and a half. It was a little bit shorter in time than the last one. And so this is from August 2015 up until December 2017. So a year and a half of bull run. And this is where it gets interesting. The bear cycle lasted longer than the bull cycle in this case. Because to me, the bear cycle ends here, but it's weird because I can definitely lose the debate that the bear run ended there. And this was an anomaly, but to me, this bear cycle of only being 9 months was too short because the last one was a year and a half. So I expected the secondary crash and we got it right there. So if I'm going to be consistent, if I'm going to call the end of this bear cycle on this candle, not this one, then I have to be consistent and say that the end of this bear cycle was also here, not there. But it's totally debatable, completely debatable. So now, where did your bull market begin? Did your bull market begin here in the beginning of 2019? Or did your bull market begin here in March, April 2020? Either way, the bull run is going to last at least a year. If your bull run started here, then it's possible that you are now on a year-long bear bandwagon. But I believe it started here. And now for me, this bull run is too short. It's too short in terms of price, and it's too short in terms of time. So we're always in nothing ever repeats exactly the same. And that is why I am looking for this to be a short correction like what happened in 2013, followed by another run-up, but I'm not expecting a monster monthly candle like this. I'm expecting this candle over the course of 6 months instead of 1, which means that to me, this bull market is going to drag out into 2022 and as long as 2023. And then the 9 to 18-month bear market will begin. And that bear market could go through the halving, which would be very interesting and very unique. Okay, I think that explains it, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys, I think we covered good stuff. Let me go. I got a 3-hour drive into the Mexican desert to check out some awesome land, because I don't know, America is not going in a direction that my family expected it to when they migrated there. And Mexico seems like an option for the future. All right, hey everyone, welcome to another private Q&A session for June 10th, Thursday, June 10th to be precise. And we have very few people here in this one. I guess people are relaxing. It is noon New York time, so it's a little bit rough for Asia and Australia and New Zealand, but US should be awake. And throw some questions at me, guys. Raise your hand, turn on your mics, or type them in the Q&A window. Let's do it. It'll be very challenging for me to analyze another trader. There's really infinite number of trading styles. It's what makes it unique. You don't want to follow another person's trading style. You want to come up with your own unique trading style. And I've never used order flow. I've never been a huge fan of looking at the order book for my trading. I've always just used price action. Price and time, that's always been my style of trading. Now, it doesn't mean that using order flow is bad. It could be great, but you need an expertise in order flow. So you can learn order flow from anyone that trades order flow, but eventually you don't want to copy their trades. You want to absorb their knowledge and combine what you learned with something else that you have learned on your own. The best traders that I have ever met are the ones that have come up with their own strategies, and they can kind of listen to other people, but listening to other people can also get you into a lot of trouble. I know earlier this year, I was certainly swayed by the bullishness of Willy Woo and Plan B as to how bullish they were. And I do like those guys. And I do read Willy's newsletter. It's the only thing I read outside of my own views on the price of Bitcoin. And it definitely swayed me a little more bullish than I otherwise would be. And right now we, had a bit of a dip. So you really want to stick to your guns. And there's nothing wrong with being wrong as long as you have the proper risk management. So I'm not going to knock anyone's trading other than their Elliott wave traders. That's like the one system that I honestly can't stand. Elliott wave or anything Elliott wave-ish. That I'll talk shit about. And the reason is because Elliott wave is the one system, not the one system, but Elliott wave is a system with a style that it's never wrong. When you look at the history of any chart on any time frame at any chart, it's like, well, the Elliott wave predicted it perfectly. But that's because it's retroactively adjusted backwards. And that's the one system I cannot stand. According to Elliott wave, the stock market should have topped 8 years ago, and it should have been going down for the last decade. And clearly, it's like, oh, the fifth wave just gets extended and extended and extended. So other than, as long as your trading system does not retroactively change what it said, it's good. It's good as long as you learn and understand. What do you think about this pump and your thoughts of it reaching the coming depth cross on the daily before more pain? That's a very specific question. We did talk about it earlier today on the public stream. We'll go back to that and review real quick. I drew this triangle yesterday, and the triangle has not changed. I did not adjust it today, which means that we are being rejected at the top of the triangle. When it comes to triangles and their breakouts, either it's going to go in the probabilistic direction and it's going to break down later this month, or we're going to go against probabilistic direction and break out. When a triangle breaks out against the probabilistic direction, it needs to get above the prior swing high. But the moment it gets above the prior swing high, it will literally be in the depth cross zone. So that creates another dilemma. So at the moment, I am under the assumption that we are being rejected at the top of the triangle. So the probability of getting into the depth cross is actually less than 50%, versus the probability of getting back to the bottom of the triangle is greater than 50%. Is it enough to short Bitcoin right here? Maybe, maybe not. If I was to short Bitcoin right here, my stop loss would be very, very tight, literally above today's swing high. You're better off waiting and staying patient. And if you're looking to short Bitcoin because of this triangle, I would hope that we would consolidate for the rest of the day. And the rest of the day is only 2 more 4-hour candles. And then take the short trade at the break of today's low, looking for a target at the bottom of the triangle or the breakdown with a stop loss above today's swing high. Because if the price goes into the middle of the triangle again, the breakout area now becomes here. And that gives you a little bit more wiggle room for a bullish trade into the depth cross, which I should probably slide over to here, because the depth cross ain't happening back there. That is the area. I mean, these lines are kind of old and they're getting annoying. I'll probably delete. You know what? I'm not going to do this on a private stream. I'm going to move all this on a public stream tomorrow. Probably going to redo all these lines as well. I'm going to get rid of all these arrows. We'll do it on a public stream, not on a private stream. But right now, this line stays here. We are being rejected. I am not entering any bullish trades. In fact, on a 4-hour scale, you literally have the MRI top last candle. So what does that mean? 1 to 4 candle correction, and then reevaluate. We can call this candle 1. So that means we got 12 more hours of downside or consolidation before we reevaluate the market.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of information and news about Bitcoin is like basically MySpace or like the Nokia or Motorola of the world, like right now. So people are saying there's something else. I don't know what coin it will be, or overtake Bitcoin in the next 1 or 2 years or something around that.
Yes.
Do you believe in this, or I don't know?
No, absolutely not, because MySpace and Blockbuster and other things, they are companies. Bitcoin is not a company. Ethereum is a company, but Bitcoin is not a company. Bitcoin is a decentralized protocol. No one controls it. That's why it's laughable when the G7 says they're going to ban Bitcoin. So you can ban Ethereum. I mean, that's easy. You can just go and round up Vitalik Buterin and it's over. But this is why, this is the big confusion. It's like saying the internet's going to get taken over by Google. Well, but how do you compare Google and the internet? Like the internet is not Google. But people think that Bitcoin is Google when Bitcoin is actually the internet, and good luck overtaking Google, right? So if Bitcoin was a company, which it's not, it would be kind of like Google. Good luck overtaking that. It's possible, but unlikely. But Bitcoin is like 1,000x, like infinitely more untouchable than Google, because it's not a company, while Google is still a company. So this is why those comparisons are factually inaccurate. You can compare any shitcoin with any other shitcoin. Can Ethereum be overtaken by Cardano, or, well, EOS clearly can't do it, or Polkadot, or whatever some guy is going to create tomorrow? Maybe that Larimer is going to come up with a 6th scam and overtake Ethereum finally. Like, that's very possible, very, very possible. But it's not going to happen to Bitcoin because it's not switchable. So this is the issue. When I debated Roger Ver on the cruise, I made him admit something that a lot of people missed, where he tried to bait me into admitting that if something better than Bitcoin comes along, I would switch to something better. And I tried explaining to him that no, it's like, I think, did Jack Moeller say it or somebody else say it? I will die on this hill defending Bitcoin. That's me as well. Like, I will never switch from Bitcoin. I will let my Bitcoins go to zero, or the value of the, I will let my, value go to zero, or I will sell it for US dollars or for the S&P 500. I'm not going to be switching to another shitcoin ever. And Roger Ver, in that little argument, admitted, because he was already going to creating Bcash, and he was big on Dash and other coins. So he was already diversified. And I made him admit, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, Roger, if Bcash doesn't succeed, if your coin doesn't succeed, you would switch to Dash or something else. And he said, yes. Okay, that's the difference, right? Because those are all companies, and nothing is stopping you from switching company to company, but not Bitcoin. This is what makes Bitcoin special. There are too many people that will not switch, And this is how a 5% minority can push a change on the 95% majority. It sounds really, really bad. It sounds bad that 5% minority can take over a 95% majority. But that's because that 5% is too committed. And because you don't want the majority always deciding, because the majority might want a free $10,000 check forever.
Yeah. So one thing about it, right? I noticed this bull cycle, there's been a lot of new investors, so they don't know nothing about investing. They don't know like any knowledge of stuff around Bitcoin. They see something, cheap, but don't look at the supply and think, it's a good investment. So hence going into Ethereum, because it looks more cheaper than Bitcoin. Don't you think these basically non-knowledgeable retail investors getting into the space will go into shitcoins? That's the only problem we're seeing, this bubble of shit knowledge going into shitcoins.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Unit bias is very, very real. And that's why very, very soon, and by soon I mean this 4-year bull cycle, Bitcoin will be priced in Satoshis. It'll still be Bitcoin, but it will be priced in Satoshis. But you want that Satoshi to be a little bit more valuable than it is now. So you want that Satoshi to be, 1/100th of a penny, or you want that Satoshi to be as close to a penny as possible in US dollar terms. So yeah, it's just unit bias. And once all these websites start referring to Bitcoin and Satoshis, Bitcoin is going to take over the unit bias.
Yeah, so I'm down in the Baja area, and someone says, since you're down there now, is there anything sketchy or unsafe about areas like El Rosarita, La Paz, or other coastal towns, etc., being so close to Sinaloa? I'm not even familiar with that one.
Look on the other side of the sea for that.
Yeah, I got my buddy right here. I don't know if am I dropping your name?
No, that's okay.
All right,
Yeah.
It's your call. I like to maintain people's privacy.
Hell, I own the Baja Insider. They can look it up and learn about safety, and we write articles about this stuff all the time.
Does this even come up as a concern from the people you know down there? Yeah, I mean, you can't generalize.
You have to be smart wherever you go.
So I was just in La Paz, beautiful little town. I was also in Todos Santos, beautiful little town. I'm here in Cabo. Man, the amount of like last night, we're at this bar. It's full of Americans or Europeans or Canadians, Americans, mostly Canadians and European Americans. And they look like they were like freshmen in college. They look like they were between 18 and 19 years old. 100 of them. So clearly it's pretty safe. I mean, just by looking at what's going on. Do you want to walk down the street alone at 2 o'clock in the morning? Probably not. They have Uber here as well. So you just want to be smart. You don't want to get too drunk, but you don't feel unsafe. I mean, it's not great when there's like these giant cars with a policeman with machine guns, but it feels okay. It feels great here. Feels pretty safe. Unless my friend here wants to give a little more clarity, you guys can probably hear him.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got to be smart wherever you are in the world these days. But relative to being in a lot of places in the United States, where I've been in California, I'm much safer here. Yeah, there are issues. We have cartels everywhere around, but there's no war. There's no imbalance. And when they're in balance, it just kind of runs along. And yes, there's things illegal, but you can live here very comfortably in almost any city in the Baja, and most of rural Mexico, incredibly safe. It's the bigger cities, like anywhere. You got to really be more concerned.
Also, if you're going to actually be down here, learn Spanish. I need to learn Spanish. It'll help a lot.
Any of the tourist towns, just so you know, will always, there's more resentment or prejudice in the areas where there's so many of the Americans or foreigners, partying and having, they accept it, they deal with it, they make their money that way, but they don't really, it's like they're more tolerant of you than they love you. You go to other parts of Mexico and they actually love you. They're very wonderful people.
All right. No, Canada ain't never getting better. Get the hell out of there. And the weather here is incredible. So I have now been to, actually, I've never really been to Cancun. I've been to Playa del Carmen. I've been to Tulum. Playa del Carmen is more resorts. Tulum, I never really partied in Tulum. But I've been there. I've gone, I did the pyramids in Chichen Itza and the surrounding Coba. I've been to Acapulco. I've been to Mexico City. I've been to Guadalajara. And now I am in Cabo. And I got to say, Cabo's my favorite. Cabo's my favorite out of them all because it's that combination of not too big of a city like Mexico City or Guadalajara. I mean, the problem with Mexico City and Guadalajara, it's like New York or it's like LA. You got friends on the other side of town. You're like, oh man, I don't want to sit in traffic for 2 hours to go have dinner with you. And the cities are too big. If I want to live in Mexico City, I might as well live in New York or LA or, one of these other giant cities. And unlike places like Thailand, Bangkok, I don't mind Bangkok because their public transportation is really good. Same thing with Hong Kong. Their public transportation is great. New York, it's okay. I mean, but London, public transportation is pretty good. So other than that, I prefer smaller cities like Kiev, like Tbilisi. They're much, much smaller, which is very useful. But there's no public transportation here in Cabo. But the city's not big. It's a very small city. It's got everything you need. So I'm really enjoying it. Like, this has been my favorite out of all the Mexican cities I've been to. All right, guys. Let's grab one more question, and I want to join Ugly Stream. He's doing an event in Ensenada, which is also on the Baja Peninsula, but it's like North Baja, which I believe is a different time zone even, which is weird. And I haven't been to that area yet. So I haven't been to Ensenada, which is very close to Tijuana. I want to go to those areas as well. So I'll be there in August in those areas, Ensenada and maybe Tijuana. All right, so going once, going twice, and we are done. I'm gonna pause the recording. Can we one day travel with you? Yeah, I was, I just gotta get these conferences to be well-oiled machines, so I don't have to, do much for them. I got a couple of other projects I gotta launch, including the MRI alert service. And then I want to start to focus on educating about Bitcoin. And I got to do like one of these tours, one of these bus tours through maybe North America or something, we'll see. But yeah, we can probably work something out. All right, and we are back for yet another Q&A session for Saturday, June 12th. How time flies. We got a few people. We're still in the beta testing stage of Q&A. Tomorrow, you guys will see this on the Tone Vays YouTube channel. So without further ado, we have a couple of questions and people want to ask them on audio. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Raise your hand in the attendee window, and I will go ahead and call on you. All right, and then you are up. Unmute your mic, ask away. See what you got.
Okay, thanks for the chance. Yes, my question is, I was hodling my crypto portfolio throughout this mini bear market, so I don't have that much capital at the moment. So do you think it's good to sell some and then use that capital to buy the dip later on? Or
I don't. I don't because of time constraints. So I'm gonna go back to the chart. While it is possible that, and more likely than not, that it's possible and more likely than not, the triangle would break downside. You do seem to be in front of a computer all the time. So you are one of those people that could do it because you're going to take on very little risk. Like, for example, you can take a shot at this, right? Like, I wouldn't sell the entire portfolio. But right now, my expectation is that we're going to go down. So if I was sitting in front of my computer or most of the day, every day, I would consider getting out, not with everything, but with a fair portion. But then get back in, not at this breakout, but this breakout. So in case, because it's so important, time, based on time, I'm anticipating will end sometime in July. In July, I expect us to go up. It's possible that the lows have been made. It's possible that the lows have not been made. But from a time perspective, I don't see this lasting into next year. So from a time perspective, this is the time to dollar cost average. Like, if I had a fiat job, I would just hold on to my Bitcoin and add more Bitcoin over the next few months. But if I did not have a fiat job and my job was trading capital, I would probably exit with a fair chunk and watch it very, very carefully and get back in real early, because if I exit now and I'm wrong and I get back in, I only lost a few percentage points. Like, if I exit right now and I'm wrong and the price goes back up, I only lost 5% because I'm back in after a 5% move against me. But my expectation is that we go to the bottom of the triangle. That's 7%. And then a breakdown from that triangle, which is probably going to be another 15, 20%. So your reward can be certainly high with very low risk on the exit. And I would not exit 100%. This would be the anticipated drop down to the $25,000 range. That's an extra 23%. Plus the current price, that's a 30% drop from current levels. Meanwhile, my risk is only 5%. So if I was to exit now, that's where I go back in. But if I have fiat to keep dollar cost averaging, I would just dollar cost average throughout this whole thing at this point, because the time to exit was back there, back when we broke this low. That was the time to get out. Now it's a little too late to get out on a long-term scale based on both time and price. If we rally into this area of 42, then you can also reconsider exiting and buying the dip, assuming the dip comes. Otherwise, you buy the breakout
when you clear the moving averages. Ended up taking a leverage short position at an average of approximately $37,000 with a stop at 36.5. That doesn't make sense. Your stop should be above your entry. I mean, that's a stop loss. So if you are, unless you already lowered your stop so that you have a break-even trade. So you may want to clarify that. I moved it down. Okay, that's good. Okay, that makes sense. You really want to be careful with perpetual contracts. The fees will eat you alive. Perpetual contract fees are every 8 hours. You don't use perpetuals. You will see your profit bleed away. You want to use the most liquid nearest future expiration. Oh, daily funding pays shorts still. Interesting. That's good to know. Okay, as long as that's happening, keep the perpetual. But then when that's not happening, but you want to keep your short, flip the perpetual into the futures contract. If this was your trade, would you have an exit at the bottom of the descending triangle on the daily, or just hold on and see what plays out? No, I would not exit at the bottom of the triangle. Absolutely not. Not at this point. Not at this point. Over here, I would exit. Okay, so let's review. Good question. So you've taken the short at an average price of 37, which is at the top of these candles. You have now lowered your stop loss, so you're following the tone-based rules to 36.5. So no matter what happens, you're out with a profit. Now, what happens if you are right in your trade and you come down to the bottom of the triangle? Well, let's review what happened the last time we came down. What would I have done? Well, this is a weekly MRI buy. So the moment this candle is happening, I'm already considering taking my profit off the short and actually thinking about going long. Now, as it's crashing, I have no reason to take my profit, even though it's a weekly MRI buy, and it still is a weekly MRI buy. My worst case scenario, I am out of my trade right here. On this candle, following this candle on strength. So you're still near the bottom of the triangle, but you waited because this thing could have closed down here and kept breaking down. So if this thing gets down to the bottom of the triangle, this time around, it's going to be different. First of all, the MRI buy on a weekly would have already played out. You're also further along in the triangle, which has a higher probability of dropping further. So I would be very confident in Bitcoin going down into the 20s if we're back at the bottom of the triangle. In fact, I would consider adding to my short position at the bottom of the triangle instead of taking profit. But it also depends how it gets there, how much time it takes, and will you even still have that position because you can get stopped out tomorrow, okay? But no, I would take on shorts at the bottom of this triangle, not try to take my profit. All right, guys, I want to go off on a little bit of a tangent to explain what I mean, because on yesterday's stream with Jimmy Song and Bitcoin Mechanic, as great as it was, people, I don't want to generalize libertarians or anarchists, even though I do all the time. Their ideas, while great in theory, are not necessarily great in practice. Just like a lot of the fiat people, like Paul Krugman and Nouriel Roubini, their theories might also be great in theory, and they are terrible in practice. So let's be realistic about the situation. So if you have not watched yesterday's show, the Bitcoin brief from yesterday, you want to go ahead and watch it now, okay? Before I try to re-explain my position. So this is the Bitcoin brief I know it's Giacomo in the picture. We need to replace Giacomo with Bitcoin Mechanic, though Giacomo has not been booted off the show. Giacomo is always welcome on the show. He's just been harder to get a hold of. And the topic we were discussing was, of course, El Salvador and their currency situation. So very few people understand what I mean. They hear Tone Vays say, Ecuador is going to have a fiat currency, or maybe Ecuador should have a fiat currency, and people stop listening. They start screaming, no, we need decentralization. When you said Bitcoin can handle it, Bitcoin can handle it. No, it can't. It really can't. I'm sorry, grandma ain't using Bitcoin and she ain't going to be using Bitcoin. So we do, as a leader of a country, which I am not, but if I was, as a leader of a country who knows how to use Bitcoin, I would still want, a person selling, I don't know, fruit on the side of the road with no cell phone service, or a grandma that just does not know how to operate a Bitcoin wallet, to have a nice, stable environment for financial transactions. And yes, a fiat currency is not always the mother of all evils. It's how that fiat currency has been created and how it's being run. Okay, so here's where the situation starts to get a little bit tricky. Someone in the comments actually understood what I was trying to say, and it seemed like it was literally one person. By the way, I'm not 30 south. I mean, I'm all the way in Cabo, so this is like I'm like 30 hours south of Tijuana. So maybe 20 hours south of Tijuana by car. So it's a 30-minute flight, maybe. Okay, here it is. Finally, someone understood. Tone, you have an excellent point. A local, transparent, sovereign currency by the people, for the people, where the benefits of such a monetary system goes back to the people can work. Iceland 2015 monetary reform study. I actually haven't read that one, but I know Iceland actually had serious good reforms back then. Add to it the honest connection to Bitcoin, and it can absolutely work. If not, it will just revert back to the supported Bitcoin. Exactly. The goal would be to maintain and manage your own money within your system. Exactly. By passing the parasitic problems of banking, central banking, and international banking. That's the important part, the IMF and World Bank. The only way to have control is to control your own monetary system. Yes. Now, you can outsource the control of your monetary system to a higher authority. In the case of El Salvador, they have been outsourcing their monetary system to the United States government. Now they are outsourcing their monetary system to the United States government or the decentralized Bitcoin system. Okay, people now have a choice. Combine that with Bitcoin and you're good to go. Okay, so several things going on here. Actually, I didn't see that second comment. Let me see what that is. So I wrote, someone gets it. Also, grandma and the very poor and the uneducated will not adopt Bitcoin anytime soon, and Lightning is still a bit complicated. And then someone replied, you do realize, though, that central banks enable government overspending, not force it to the government's right. The overspending usually comes from financing ever-increasing populist social programs to win elections. Yes, I know that. The wealth redistributions from poor to rich seems to happen in every political economic system anyhow. It's best put down to time preference. Yes, I understand all that. I understand it, okay? So there's a couple of things that are generally going on. First of all, a republic is okay, is good, a democracy is good, but a king or a ruler of a country is not necessarily bad, okay? We can argue which is a better system, the European or the American system, or what's happening in the United Arab Emirates, okay? I've spent a lot of time in Dubai,
which is in the United Arab Emirates. And those regions are run by, I mean, I don't really want to call them dictators, but they're not exactly democratic republics. And I like those regions. I really like Dubai because just because you have a ruler and a benevolent dictator doesn't mean that the system is bad. Here's an example. We have Twitter. Twitter does not have a benevolent dictator because Jack can't do shit. Even if Jack believed in the freedom of speech or, didn't want to ban Trump, I don't know if Jack wanted to boot Trump off his platform. I have absolutely no idea, okay? And even if I ask him, I don't know if his answer is going to be honest, all right? I have no idea. But what I know is Twitter is not ruled by a dictator. There are too many people that control Twitter by democracy. That democracy censors the shit out of anything COVID, out of anything politics, presidents can be booted, whatever, right? So a Twitter ruled by a dictator, where the dictator's philosophy was, I will defend freedom of speech until I die. That becomes a much better Twitter as a, ruled by a single benevolent dictator than the current Twitter that isn't ruled by a benevolent dictator. So the point is, just because you have a completely centralized system, it doesn't make it worse. It all goes back to the thinking of the person, okay? Look at the country of Oman. Oman has had a leader that wanted to build something out of Oman. And it's now, trying to challenge Dubai. It has a long way to go, but it's on its path. We can look at a country like Singapore. Again, ruled by a single person for a while, and look what Singapore has been, okay? So yes, drugs are illegal there, just like in Dubai, and just like in Middle Eastern countries. And if you like drugs, those countries aren't for you, okay? I don't do drugs, so I'm perfectly fine there, not a problem, okay? So it works for me. It doesn't work for some, okay? Do you have private property rights over there? No, you don't, right? Like you can rent an apartment. I think you might be, I don't know if you can buy an apartment, maybe. I don't know if you can buy land there. I haven't looked into it, right? So just because you have a system with a dictator, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. And just because you have a decentralized system or a system ruled by committee doesn't mean that it's necessarily good. Because when that committee wants to take all the money from a single rich person and give it to themselves, the committee wins. Versus if that one person believed in property rights and believed in freedom of speech and believed in other rights, he can make a much better system as a leader, okay? Now, this takes us back to this concept where I also try to argue that we don't need centralized Twitter. We need a centralized Twitter will work just fine as long as the leader of that system believes in free speech. And the one thing I didn't argue with Jimmy and Mechanic on is that we have spent 5 years on the show talking about how decentralization and blockchains are stupid for 99.9% of everything going on in crypto. And yet somehow I'm arguing with Jimmy Song that a decentralized Twitter is not going to work, just like a decentralized property rights system or, supply chain is not going to work for the same reason. Decentralized Twitter is not going to work, okay? It just depends on who the ruler of Twitter is and how much control he has. Maybe if Jack had 10 times more control of Twitter than he actually does, Twitter would be a much better free speech platform. We don't know that. That there's things that we don't know, okay? So now let's talk about a currency system. So now I'm going to switch screen shares
Man, I know this is going to be like a long discussion, so you have to watch on 2x and stuff. I'm going to open up my notepad because right after that show, a friend of mine texted me. And I really don't want to dox his name. So I'm just checking this document one more time. I'm going to refer to him by his initials, MK. All right, I'm going to make this full screen, and I'm going to do a new screen share. So let's talk about what I tried to explain on the show yesterday with Jimmy. And let me unmute you guys. With Jimmy and Mechanic. Okay, so my friend writes me, I totally see the point in your suggestion, but when I thought about it more, some questions came to my mind regarding the execution of that idea. And of course, I would really appreciate it if you elaborate on it. This is the whole currency thing. If a country like El Salvador created their own currency and simultaneously used Bitcoin as a reserve currency, would that in some way mean that the total currency will be backed by Bitcoin? The answer is yes, but this doesn't have to be directly, okay? There's absolutely no reason for El Salvador to create, well, let's call it El Salvador token, okay? There's really no reason for El Salvador to create an El Salvador token backed by Bitcoin. It's not necessary. You can just implement Bitcoin unless they want paper money, because some parts of their society may need paper money. And if you want to back that paper money by Bitcoin to make it easier for people to use paper money in your country, logically ready to go to a cashless society. And by cash, I simply mean paper. If your country is not technologically ready to eliminate paper cash, you may need paper cash, and you can back that paper cash by Bitcoin. And now you're not actually creating the El Salvador fiat currency at all. You're just creating a way for people to spend their Bitcoin in an area where there is no internet. Perfectly fine. We're not changing what El Salvador has done. But right now, what El Salvador did do is they simply replaced the control of their currency from only being the US dollar to being the US dollar or the decentralized Bitcoin network. Maybe they are interested in completely removing the US dollar from their society, and then they will only have a single currency in their society, being the Bitcoin decentralized network. This is great for us Bitcoiners, a little bit worrisome for grandmas and other people. You have to be realistic here. So I envision a future where the US dollar part of the El Salvadorian society will be replaced by the El Salvador fiat currency. Now, this will, of course, be done for several reasons. One of those reasons is not all central bankers are evil. Their outcomes may turn out evil, but they think they are doing a good thing. And you have to look at things from the other person's point of view, okay? So when I answered the question, I said, yes, the backing, please ignore my spelling because I'm totally dyslexic, but the backing could be indirect as a positive feedback loop. Here's what I mean. If the central bank of El Salvador decides to put Bitcoin in their central bank's treasury, and they start accumulating Bitcoin in that treasury, it instantly increases the credibility of the central bankers of El Salvador. It means that they actually understand hard money, okay? A few central bankers understand hard money. Now, most of them don't get to the position of being central bankers, just like the doctors that, know that the COVID vaccines are dangerous, okay? They don't get to have any positions of power. But if a person, let's say you put, well, I think safety is on the extreme side of this, but let's say the Bank of El Salvador decided to hire Saifedean to run their central bank. Now, Saifedean might shut down the central bank altogether, or Saifedean would simply use the central bank to accumulate Bitcoin for the country of El Salvador. Okay? And now that the Central Bank of El Salvador is holding a bunch of Bitcoin, the credibility of the country and the financial security of that country is looking very, very good. That allows the country to create their own fiat currency. And this is the big point of contention. Okay. Now, if you put responsible central bankers, and I know there is a little bit of a contradiction here, but bear with me, guys. If you put responsible people at the head of the central bank, let's say I became the head of the central bank, okay? This may turn out to be bad, all right? But here's what I would consider doing, okay? And this gets to question number 2. Would the reason for creating a local currency be that it would make it easier to settle payments with the IMF and with the country? I mean, I don't really care how to settle payments with the IMF. There's only one goal. If I was in charge of El Salvador, I have one goal: not to be indebted to the IMF. That's the goal, right? This is a problem. If I have to settle payments with the IMF, that's a problem. That means I took a loan from the IMF and they got me by the cojones, okay? This is how Americans, the American government and the European government destroy, Latin American countries. And this is how they rape and pillage the countries, by being indebted to the IMF. Okay, how do you avoid going into debt with the IMF? There is a lesser of two evils here. If printing your own money gets you out of being indebted to the IMF, I will choose the route of printing money than being indebted to the IMF. Okay, as a country, not as an individual. We're not talking about shitcoiners printing their own money. We're talking about proper, responsible economists printing the money for the people of their country in their best effort to make the lives of the people in those countries better without going into debt with the IMF. Going into debt with the IMF will destroy your country. And it has over and over and over again. Okay. Go read the book Economic Hitman. Okay. If you don't believe that. So the lesser of two evils is to find a responsible way to take on some debt, but don't even take on debt. Don't take on debt. Okay. Avoid taking on debt or take on short-term debt. Okay, to help the people of your country. So this is why this is going to be a long discussion, but I think I have I hope people listen to this, because this is generally a hard concept to explain. So here's my answer. The answer. So let me read the question again. Would the reason of creating a local currency be that it would make it easier to sell? Well, the answer is technically yes. It would be easier to sell payments, but more than that, more important than that, it would be the currency to pay government employees. Private sector can choose between Bitcoin, between this government fiat currency or Bitcoin. It would also be the currency of choice for grandma, because Bitcoin is too complicated for some. All right. So here's what that means. You have a local fiat currency that is also legal tender alongside Bitcoin, which is also legal tender. Now, if you are working in the private sector, if you're working in the private sector, you will always choose to be paid in Bitcoin if you are technologically capable of using Bitcoin. You want Bitcoin. But if you are a government employee, there's lots of government employees. There is medical could be private. You don't necessarily need a military, causes problems, but say military. There will always be government bureaucrats. Let's be realistic. You want that government sector to be as small as possible, but that sector does exist. And someone does have to build that road. And a government employee and a government surveyor used to choose where this road is going to be built. Okay. I know anarchists think they can build a city without any kind of central planning of a city, but that could be disastrous. I haven't been to Brazil yet, but I've been to some other countries like India. Okay. Central planning of building a city isn't necessarily bad. I mean, there was a 1,000-year history of city planning, and you throw a bunch of people on an island that don't know any of that history, and they're never going to build you a great city because they don't have experience in building cities. So some central planning is needed. All right. You have a small public sector. How does that public sector get paid? Now, let's go back to question one. Remember, your country has Bitcoin on reserve at the central bank, but you don't want to spend it. You want to hodl as much as possible. Now, all of this is taken under a grain of salt that the communists don't take over the country and pillage the Bitcoin treasury. So let's assume you have, whether this is a dictatorship or not, there's, again, going back to the thing, there's nothing wrong with a dictatorship as long as the dictatorship is of the person who believes in freedom. Okay. So I'm going to use myself. Let's say I am the dictator and I force the central bank to hold Bitcoin in treasury and hodl it for as long as possible to increase the wealth of the country. I would then go ahead and allow anyone to use Bitcoin without paying taxes under Bitcoin gains as legal tender. I would, of course, drop taxes as low as possible so people want to come to the country and start their businesses. But then, yes, I would create a fiat currency for the country. And the government employees would get paid in that fiat currency. Now, why would that happen? The reason this would happen is because in the United States, they cannot print money. They actually can't print money. They did not print 23% of all the fiat in circulation in 2020. They borrowed 23% of all the fiat in circulation. What does that mean? That means that, yep, I see a hand. I'll get to you guys in a second. That means that the $10 trillion that was created this year was created as debt. And here's how disastrous that is. 75 to 80% of the US federal government's national debt, whatever that national debt is it 20 trillion, 30 trillion? We can go to the national debt clock and find out. I'm actually going to go use my second monitor and go to the national debt clock. National clock. US national debt clock. It's loading. I think it's like 25 trillion or something. The unfunded liabilities is the real problem. US national debt. Once it loads, I'll tell you guys the number. 28 trillion. I was close. I said about 25 to 30. So out of that 28 trillion, do you guys realize that more than 20 trillion of that is interest? It's accumulated interest. So that means the US national debt would have been 80% smaller at only 8 trillion had the money simply been printed and not borrowed. That's the problem. That's the corruption. That's the, the invisible man behind, the invisible bankers behind the curtain paying themselves. So I don't want to borrow money and pay and owe it, because unlike the US, El Salvador has to borrow from the IMF. I don't want to borrow from the IMF. I want to print the money so that I am not beholden to whoever allowed me to print it. I am a sovereign nation. I should be allowed, I am going to print the money, okay? And yes, the first thing that comes to everyone's mind is, I'm going to print like Zimbabwe. No, that's not what's going to happen. Because you have responsible people behind the money printing who are trying to hodl as much Bitcoin as possible, they are printing as little as possible to pay the government employees as responsibly as possible to avoid catastrophes, to avoid owing to others. And as long as the value of the Bitcoin in the treasury is increasing faster than the money that the government is printing, you are functioning just fine because you don't owe the debt. And there will be demand for this fiat printed money. Let's do an example. Let's say El Salvador only has 1,000 people, and 100 of the 1,000 people work for the government, and the other 900 people work for the private sector. That means only 10% of the people, 100 people, are getting paid in printed money. The immediate assumption is no one would want it, but that is not true. I bet you many of the people of the 900 batch may not be comfortable with Bitcoin, and they would rather trust that the fiat printed money by the government, okay? And that money could have more utility. It has the paper option. Grandma can use it, okay? Certain people that don't want to educate themselves about Bitcoin can use it. And it's possible that 10% of the economy that gets paid in government printed fiat, it has huge value to society. The only thing that makes a fiat currency from the government, valuable or not, is how responsible that government is at printing that money. So if El Salvador could be the most responsible fiat currency printed out of thin air, that currency will be more valuable than the US dollar, than the Kuwaiti dinar, which is the most valuable fiat currency, than the euro, than the British pound, okay? Yes, it's still evil, and yes, it's still money printing, but it could still be good. It could still be better than what we currently have. So now the government of El Salvador is printing money out of thin air, but they're doing it in the most responsible fashion they can, okay? And they're using it to pay their small government sector. And some of those government employees will then convert that fiat currency into Bitcoin. But some people in that country that earn in Bitcoin will convert it into that government fiat. And it will have its own free market exchange rate. This fiat currency does not, actually, it should not be directly backed by Bitcoin or gold or anything else. Because if the government starts printing that El Salvador fiat money irresponsibly, it will instantly crash against Bitcoin, which is legal tender within the country. So the legal tender laws of Bitcoin in that country and the continued dominance of the US dollar in that country will make sure that the El Salvador fiat money is being printed responsibly. Otherwise, that 10% of the economy will hyperinflate. But who gives a shit if that 10% of the economy will hyperinflate? Because 90% of the economy is stable on Bitcoin, and that 90% stable on Bitcoin would instantly go to 99% because everyone will instantly be able to say, no, I don't want the government fiat. And because the government sector is so small, a government employee could just quit the government sector and go work for the private sector and get paid in Bitcoin because Bitcoin is also legal tender. So this is the voluntary system. I choose to work for the government. I choose to be paid in government fiat. No one is stopping me from saying, I don't want to work for the government. I go work for the private sector in El Salvador and I get paid in Bitcoin. Or I take the government fiat and I instantly convert it into Bitcoin if I no longer trust the government's fiat. Okay, so this is where fiat system is actually really, really handy because the Bitcoin part of the economy will keep everybody in check. Okay, let's move on to the next question. What if a country used just Bitcoin as the official currency? That would be the regular mechanism that they will use for settlement of external debt, for example. And what the debt issuing country isn't accepting Bitcoin. That part is completely irrelevant, right? I don't give, like, if I'm running, let's say I'm running El Salvador, right? I just used whatever, money the country has. I bought a shit ton of Bitcoin. It's sitting in my treasury. A year or two goes by, the country is rich as hell on Bitcoin. The IMF says, we're not taking your Bitcoin to pay back our debt. First of all, shouldn't have the debt. The system I just described gets you out of the debt cycle. If the IMF doesn't want my Bitcoin, I don't give a shit. There's 1,000 middlemen that will take my Bitcoin and convert it into whatever the hell the IMF wants. If the IMF wants to get paid in carrots, the middleman will pay them in carrots. Okay, this is the thing I've been trying to explain to people forever in the oil space. I don't believe in the petrodollar. If I want to buy oil in euros, I guarantee you I can buy oil in euros. Okay, I don't care. I have euros. You have oil. You don't want to take my euros? Fine. That guy will take it. He'll charge me 0.5% and he'll give you the dollars. Like who cares? Who cares, right? Like, I don't care what currency IMF wants. I have Bitcoin. I'll find a middleman will happily solve my problem. Okay, irrelevant. That part's irrelevant. People got to start. I mean, look, I know the fiat system is kind of crappy, and a bank wire for some God knows what reason costs $50, but all that is going to go away. All right, and finally, last question: if the local currency is created, and let's say it's backed by Bitcoin, does it mean it's somehow a shitcoin? Well, if you're the kind of person that believes the US dollar and the euro are shitcoins, the answer is yes. If you believe that a country printing money in order to keep a society of their people, then no, right? So I answered no. It would be a regulated fiat currency of a country as legal tender. A shitcoin is some guy in a basement printing his own money. But if you see the US dollar as a shitcoin, then yes, the El Salvador fiat currency would be a shitcoin. But the world can't function without the US dollar or fiat right now. Look, I'm sorry, if all the government currencies disappeared tomorrow, the world would probably be a disaster to live in. A disaster to live. We'll probably need a few more decades to somehow weed ourselves off of government money. We're not living in a fantasy here. We're not. You're living in reality. And in reality, you need the right people with the right mindset in charge of government fiat money to slowly weed off fiat money. Okay? Like the best way to, get someone off a drug addiction is to ease them out of it, not to quit cold turkey. You guys should know that. Everyone should know that. Okay? So now let's just continue. He says, I have a lot more questions. You guys can read the rest of it. Okay. So after he reads my answers, he says, that's interesting. So it's fairly simple for a country to adopt Bitcoin as a currency. The only complication they have is to just understand the fundamentals of Bitcoin, and they are set to go. Well, yes, public sector will still get paid in fiat, right? Because the government can't print Bitcoin out of thin air. And we all like to believe that a government could function without deficit financing, but that's not always going to be possible. A government will always attempt to spend more money than the tax revenue comes in. But it's better to have the taxes as low as possible. And on some years, you will have deficit spending. And that deficit spending will be printed out of thin air. But that money doesn't get handed out. This is where a rule of law needs to come in. If a politician is handing out the printed money to their cousin, that politician needs to go to prison. Okay? This is where the rule of law needs to function. This is where your country needs to have a constitution and a court system, and dishonest politicians and government corruption needs to be weeded out. And if your country is incapable of having leadership that eliminates corruption, then none of this matters. It doesn't matter what currency you have. If the government of El Salvador is corrupt, they will just steal the Bitcoin. They will not allow private ownership of Bitcoin. All the Bitcoin will be at the banks. All the Bitcoin will be custodian, and the corrupt government will just take the Bitcoin for themselves. You are not solving any government problems by having corruption that accepts Bitcoin. You will only make it worse. You could impoverish the people more. It begins with a government as honest as possible. And when you have a government that's as honest as possible, that government can create a fiat system as honest as possible. That is checked by the fact that Bitcoin is legal tender in that country and sitting in the treasury. So now imagine a world or a country that the majority of the people in that country are using Bitcoin, no criminal laws on using Bitcoin. The public sector gets paid in printed money without debt. There is some debt, right? But there's not really debt. You're not borrowing the money. You're printing the money. So yes, that money could devalue. And you would think that inflation is going to be rampant. But that country has Bitcoin in its treasuries. So what if the fiat currency being printed loses 5% of its value every year, but the Bitcoin sitting at the government central bank is increasing 10 times faster? Why would that fiat lose 5% of its value? That fiat would actually increase in value. That's a deflationary currency, because even though the Bitcoin in the in the central bank of El Salvador is not directly backing the fiat that they're printing, The fact that they have the Bitcoin on reserve, which is verifiably provable with private keys or public keys, I should say. The fact that they have Bitcoin, the wealth of that country is getting higher. So who cares if they're increasing the fiat part of their economy and paying their employees? Like, that fiat money could actually increase in value year after year after year, as long as the country is getting wealthier by the Bitcoin sitting in the treasury. And this is the part that is so hard for people to compute, that you can print money that is increasing in value because your country is getting wealthier and with low taxes and the ability for people from, or the smartest people from around the world to come and start their businesses at low taxes and building the economy. The wealth of the country is increasing. So when the wealth of your country is increasing, government printing the money to pay a small public sector, that money would be very, very valuable, very valuable. And that money will probably be also a deflationary currency. You just need responsible people doing it. Okay, and that is what I try to explain to people, but no one seems to understand. Very few understand. Okay, I don't know if I want to read the rest of this now, but that's basically what I've been saying. Maybe I can just try to read it real quick and see if I missed anything in my explanation. Yes, public sector gets paid in fiat of the said country. Private sector can get paid in Bitcoin. Both are legal tender. Any bank can convert your Bitcoin to local fiat and vice versa. Local fiat is not backed by anything but government's holdings of Bitcoin on reserve to increase confidence in the fiat currency. The more Bitcoin the government holds on reserve, the more confidence people will have in that fiat currency that the government is printing, as long as they're open and honest about how much they're printing. The fiat can be printed by the government, but if they print too much, everyone would convert to Bitcoin, and government employees might quit and go work in the private sector that pays in Bitcoin. The fact that Bitcoin is also legal tender limits the amount of printing the government can do because their employees will quit. One of the biggest problems with government money is that they can't just print. They have to borrow it. This is why 75% of USA national debt is cumulative interest. Had the government simply been able to print the deficit, the USA debt would be 75% smaller, assuming they printed the same amount they borrowed over the last 50 years. See, it's also possible that the US debt would be twice the size it is today if the government was able to print it and not borrow it. That's what the founding fathers were afraid of. The founding fathers of America, here's what they thought. They thought that if the government had to borrow the money and not print the money, it would limit the amount of money they borrow. But instead, they didn't give a shit. So their thought process was probably the following. If the US government is allowed to print the money, they will print it to oblivion. But they didn't realize that the US government is now borrowing to oblivion, to the point where 75 to 80% of all money owed is cumulative interest. So it's that's the concept that people just don't get. So the government just prints the money to pay employees when tax revenue or other government income is not enough. Like, for example, the government of El Salvador could lease the land of the volcano for a private company to use geothermal energy of the volcano to mine Bitcoin. And that company pays the government of El Salvador the bill of using the energy from the volcano. That's how the government of El Salvador can make money. And if that form of making money plus a little, the smallest amount of tax revenue is not enough to cover all the salaries of government employees, you will have to print some extra money out of thin air. But you do it in the most responsible way possible. And as the Bitcoin in your treasury grows,
that money may not devalue. It may devalue, it may not devalue. Okay, it depends how good the people are. Okay, let's just finish reading and I'll get back to my Q&A. But if they print too much and the fiat goes to shit, it won't matter because 80% of the country is on Bitcoin. 80%, 90%, 95%, I don't know, but it will be a large amount, right? So if your country has two currencies and one has a 10 to 15% usefulness and the other 85% usefulness, if the 15% usefulness currency goes to shit, your country still functions okay. Especially if all the people are saving in Bitcoin. But the fiat keeps the economy functioning, and when the Bitcoin in treasury gets valuable, government could just back the fiat in circulation, making the fiat more valuable. Well, the fiat just becomes more valuable. But they avoid creating debt with the IMF. Remember, the goal is to avoid international debt with the IMF. Don't owe money to the gangster. You know, it's kind of like you're trying to solve a problem of paying your local mob boss back a loan. Well, why did you borrow from the local mob boss? IMF is the mob. That's the mob boss. Don't borrow from him. Find a way around borrowing from the mob. You solve a lot of problems that way. And yes, if you have to print money as a country to avoid borrowing from the mob, that is the lesser of two evils. Don't borrow from the mob. It never ends well. So now we get to Lebanon. That's exactly what happened in Lebanon. They borrowed in US dollars for the past 30 years. The central bank locked the price of the Lebanese lira at 1,500. Yeah, you lock the price, all things go to shit. You need the free market. As the opportunity and attractive investment from the Middle East and gave these investors interest rate as high as 9 to 12%. And instead of reinvesting the profits to the national economy, they simply stole the money. Yes, now Lebanese people can barely get their money from the bank, and now we are facing a hyperinflation in the national currency. Right. The reason there is hyperinflation is because the people of Lebanon do not trust the Lebanese government and the central bank of that government. No electricity, no water, no oil, no food. Right. In this situation, how could Bitcoin play a role in restoring the economy, even though we all know the stolen money won't ever return to the country? Keep in mind, the central bank now got 12 billion in reserves, and no one knows if the gold reserves actually still exist. Right, because if they had the Bitcoin, you would know if they had it by the keys. As a matter of fact, Lebanon was at one point number 14 on the world in gold reserves. Plus, there is no political solution in the country soon. How could Bitcoin solve this problem despite the non-existent politics? Will actually, Bitcoin can't solve your problem, okay? Until corrupt politicians go to prison or until a new leader emerges that wants to be honest, your problem will not be solved. I'm sorry, Bitcoin does not solve all the world problems. It starts with putting the corrupt politicians in prison. Okay, that's where it starts. Then you have to default on the debt. Tell the IMF to go F themselves and default on the debt. Before you default on the debt, you convert whatever you can. Okay, so here's what would happen, right? Let's say Tone Vays got to be the dictator of Lebanon. Okay, what would I do? Well, I would look at the wealth of the country. Okay, I am now the dictator of Lebanon. What do I have to sell and buy Bitcoin? Do I have the gold? Do I have, land I can lease to the private sector to look for oil, and they pay a royalty
How many government buildings can I sell? How many government employees can I fire? Okay, the non-essential government employees, which is like 90% of the government employees, right? How much money can I scrape together as the new dictator of Lebanon? Whatever money I can scrape together, I would put that money into Bitcoin as a multi-sig, and then wait, hodl it as long as possible for the treasury to be wealthy. Now, what else would I do as that dictator? Well, actually, I'm sorry. Before I do that, I'd put the corrupt politicians in prison. Okay. Put in a rule of law. Property rights are not actually necessary for this equation, to be honest with you guys. Property rights are nice, not necessary. You know, if Dubai doesn't have property rights for foreigners, it can still succeed and be the future most, the highest GDP in the world as a nation, UAE. UAE could have the highest GDP as a nation with only 10,000 people having property rights. The Emiratis, and that's it. And people will still go there and they will still open their businesses without owning the property, as long as the sheiks of those countries are trusted that they will not mess with your business. Okay, property rights are not necessary. They're a nice to have, not necessary. You put the corrupt politicians in prison. You create a rule of law. You give freedoms like freedom of speech, a few others. I'm personally a huge fan of the Fourth Amendment. I think it's immensely important. Again, elections might not even be needed, but here's how to clean it up. Put them in prison, put whatever you can into Bitcoin, default on the debt. Default on the debt. Just default. Say, we're not paying you. Done. Go away. Okay? You shouldn't have let us borrow. You let corrupt politicians borrow money. You may not want to do that next time. Okay? Declare Bitcoin legal tender. Legal tender. Okay? Lower taxes. Open for people to come to the country. Then create a brand new Lebanese pound with the blueprint I already discussed. And the confidence of the backing comes from the Bitcoin in the treasury. You lower taxes, you relax AML KYC laws. You tell the US they can tell my country who I can and can't do business with, and you open it up to foreign investment. Okay? Iran is a neighboring country. If you have good relations with them, businessmen from Iran want to come and open a business, fine. Okay? Neighboring countries. You gotta find a way to work with your neighbors. You may hate your neighbor's guts, but you gotta find a way to work with them. They're your neighbors. They're not going anywhere. Okay? Private ownership of property would be nice, but not necessary. It's just not. As long as people coming to Lebanon and starting a business feel safe and secure, and they know that no government goon is going to show up and take away this. And if some mob boss shows up and take away their business, a government, police would show up and arrest the gangster. Okay? That's what's needed. Not necessarily property rights. And now it says, that's exactly what happened in Lebanon. They okay, I think I might have put that twice. Okay. And yeah, I might have put it in there twice. And he says, honestly, putting them in prison is nearly impossible because each one of the rulers have their own little army. Well, then you're not going to solve your problem. Bitcoin is not going to solve your problem. I'm sorry. It's not. It's not. The only way that can be done is to try to convince them to adopt Bitcoin. And then when they would realize, okay, the Bitcoin as a Trojan horse is not the best analogy. Okay, it's not the best analogy. We all know the story of the Trojan horse. Okay, the city of Troy was lost the war because the Greeks were losing the war, and they created this giant wooden horse. They hid themselves inside the horse, and the Trojans took the horse in without realizing there were hidden soldiers inside the horse. They were able to open the gates from the inside, and that's how Troy lost the war. But the Trojans could have burned the wooden horse and not take it inside their walls. Okay, so what you have to realize is that these politicians in charge, they're not idiots. They would not have gotten that far if they were idiots. They're smart too, and they're probably smarter than you. So you may think you are inside the Trojan horse, and 90% of the time, that Trojan horse will be set on fire, and your plan ain't gonna work out very well. Okay, so when you have a corrupt regime, and that corrupt regime opens Bitcoin to the people in that regime, it can say, come, use Bitcoin, but you have to use it through an intermediary that I control. And then what do you think is going to happen? I'm the evil dictator. I'm going to steal the Bitcoin. So, no, look, it begins with the right leaders. It begins with the right leaders. We're still dealing with countries here. Let's be realistic. All right, I think I'm done with my rants. This went on for like an hour. You may think you're tricking the leaders by getting them to adopt Bitcoin, but the next thing you know, they're adopting all the shit coins and, you know, getting wealthier while making the population poorer. You know, convincing you know, some government leader to adopt Bitcoin could be his Trojan horse on you. Yeah, you convince them to adopt Bitcoin, but then the week after, he adopts all the scams and starts scamming his own population, making himself richer. Now, you don't know which way it's going to go. All right, I'm done. I'm done with the rant. Hopefully people understand where I'm coming from. And now we have a few more questions. And then I have to get going, unfortunately. Do you expect the price of breakdown the triangle next time it touches its bottom, or that it bounces up one more time? So it doesn't actually matter because they're almost one and the same. Let's go back here. So the next time Bitcoin touches the bottom of the triangle, there's not going to be that much room to the upside, right? So I don't think we're going to touch it today, and we're probably not going to touch it tomorrow. So if we touch it, let's say we touch it on June 17th. So if we touch it on June 17th, how much further up can it go? $2,000? Is that really relevant? Like, I don't think that matters much. So let's wait and see when it touches the bottom of the triangle. If it touches the bottom of the triangle, say tomorrow, it probably will go back to the top of the triangle. But if it touches the bottom of the triangle, say June 25, there's not going to be much room above the triangle. So there's a way higher probability that it's going to break down. So it all depends on when we touch the bottom. And we don't know when it's going to touch the bottom. Come up north to run Canada. Canada's lost. Canada is lost. Trudeau is sending us to hell. Yep. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Why in the world did you people vote for Trudeau is beyond me. Absolutely beyond me. Only catch is, if there were hope in hell of anyone with this type of economic policy, why didn't they be assassinated? Yeah, of course they would. Or die from COVID. Yeah, of course they would. Of course they would. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. You got your weed legalized, but now your country's destroyed. Look, I don't do drugs. Is weed a drug? I don't know. Maybe. Alcohol, is that a drug? Maybe. I drink alcohol. I don't smoke weed. I don't do any other drugs. I don't even like to take aspirin. I don't even like to take malaria medication, but I did. So also probably helped me with the COVID situation. Because I've been in Africa twice in the last year. So, yeah. Look, is the legalization of weed more important to you than your freedom? If it is, then you got what you wanted. Well, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? To me, the U.S. amendments, First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom to own guns, freedom, well, the Third Amendment is elections. That one could have been done better. The Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure. The Fifth Amendment, against self-incrimination. Those things are more important to me than smoking a joint. But to some people, smoking a joint's more important than freedom of speech, freedom to defend yourself, freedom against search and seizure. They can monitor your, I mean, if smoking a joint's more important to you than privacy in your cell phone, then then you voted for Trudeau and now you better live with it. Live in your, socialist, no rights civilization. Okay. It'd be nice to have both, but few politicians have both. I know Trump also hates Bitcoin, but Trump believes in freedom a hell of a lot more than Biden. And freedom is more important to me than Bitcoin. What good is your Bitcoin if you're not allowed to leave your house? Hello, Australia. I'll take the ability to leave the borders. I mean, okay, here's the choice. Like, what do you want? We don't really have like a freer society. I'm in Mexico right now. Mexico has no COVID restrictions. No COVID restrictions. Okay. It has other problems like, would you rather live in a country with freedom or would you rather live in North Korea with all of Satoshi's Bitcoin? Your choice. Your choice. You offer me all of Satoshi's Bitcoin, but I have to spend the rest of my life in North Korea? Or you take away all my wealth and let me choose and okay, here's your choice. Here's your choice. Here's your choice. Would you rather be given all of Satoshi's Bitcoin, but you have to spend the rest of your life in North Korea, knowing that it will never change? Like North Korea will not be the United States. It will not be Dubai. It will not be Singapore. It will stay exactly as is. Or you lose all of your wealth. You're only down to, say, $1,000 to your name. But you have full freedom to move around the world. No passport, no COVID check, no nothing. You can get on any airplane, on any car, any ship, go anywhere you want, and start any business you like. Which one would you choose? I know which one I'd choose. It's an easy choice. Freedom is more important than wealth, because with freedom, you can earn wealth. You can't earn freedom because you have wealth, unless you're a dictator. Then you have freedom, but not the other way around, right? You can have a great life in North Korea with Satoshi's Bitcoin. Someone else can take that Bitcoin from you, though.
All right. 1,800 a month to not work is still going on. Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is going on. I and others that own businesses are having a hard time getting people to work. Yeah, I know that. I know that. Why would someone come and work at your business if they're being paid by the government not to work? That's the problem. This is why you don't elect socialists into office. But hey, all right. Adnan, you still have your hand up? I'll get your question, and then we're gonna wrap this up. What do you got?
Oh yeah, hi Tone. So my question is, you see, from since the COVID crash, there's been a lot of, like government spending, stimulus payments, and a lot of people like basically getting funding from the government. Then obviously the stock market was pumped up, especially crypto, and then now we're going into a phase where lockdown is easing. Less government payments going to be given out and stuff like that, and it's going to obviously slow down everything. Do you see some sort of correction coming in soon when everything gets implemented and slowly, and we, as we slowly integrate into society?
Well, not really, right? Because as we just said, the government people not to work. So a lot of businesses and companies are struggling to get employees. When the government cuts off the paychecks, those people may have to go to work. So businesses will start to come back. So I don't think so. I think once the world opens up, markets are the price of the market is going to go higher, because now you have inflation and economic activity. So stock market would rise. Price of oil might fall. Remember, oil price falling is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Life is better when the price of oil is smaller. It stimulates economic activity. So oil price going down is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. So the price of oil hopefully will fall, but the price of the stock market would rise because there'll be more economic activity. Thank you all for watching, and I'm going to stop here. I know this was a long one, but I really wanted to explain how I see a better future for a monetary system of a country that has both Bitcoin and fiat, and they can work together until some kind of future a long time from now when the fiat part will no longer be necessary. But for now, it just is. I'm just being realistic. All right. Thanks, guys, for the private Q&A, and this will go public soon enough. Bye, guys.